G'day everyone, it's Keith again, coming at you live from the mountaintop at the Clogle project, where I can get reception, because I've just had my NBN fucked with again and had basically my ability to use the internet denied. And check out my previous post there, you can see the proof of it being fucked with, because magically Facebook was still working, it's just none of the other services were working, including HTTP, HTTPS or FTP, transmission protocols, which were being blocked. Now some of you think, oh, you know, like, it could be anyone. What makes you think it's the New South Wales government fucking with you? Well, about a year ago, or a little bit more, I witnessed some high-ranking New South Wales police engaged in a drug deal just across the border in Queensland, and they've been making my life fucking hell ever since. Now, why do we think they're related? Because the event that I was at, or I witnessed, I was doing shade structures for this event. It was called Misty Mountain or something like that. I had some young kids come and look at using the Clogle project for a small event up the top here, and then they fucked me around and they tried to not pay me for the work I did up here to try and make things usable for them. And then at the last minute they moved location to this property just over the Queensland border, but still wanted me to bring my shade structures and hire them, and I was a bit hard up for cash at the time, so I thought, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm annoyed, but let's go do this anyway, because some money is better than no money. So anyway, I rocked up to this place. I was told it was a private property in this forest. Now, allegedly it wasn't private property. I don't know for sure, but allegedly it wasn't private property. It was actually state park, allegedly, which is not what I was told at the time. But anyway, these cops rock up, you know, high-ranking cotton candy kind of dudes, with an interesting, like, you know, there's 3 or 4 cars with some very senior brass, and a strange-looking unit, which looked like a comms unit. I could show you the exact location of the site, if anyone was to inquire. Anyway, I rocked up there and was up a tree at the time and looked over to what these cops are doing, and one of them comes over and says, take down your shit, fucking you're in an illegal space, blah blah blah. And I'm like, alright, yes officer. I had no idea, sure. And I look over and I see this fucking, I don't know, must have been that thick, maybe, I don't know, foot wide, big white bag of powdery substance being exchanged from one of these young kids who was supposedly promoting this party to one of these cotton candy uniformed officers, not with any kind of arrest or police raid kind of intent, but as I hear, you take this bag and here, you take this money. Drug deal kind of thing. So I witnessed that, and then it's like, alright, fucking none of my fucking business. Not knowing at the time, realising that the whole lot's related. These kids have got me here, tried to fuck up my business here, taking me out to fucking whoop whoop where I've witnessed this fucking drug deal in Queensland involving New South Wales police. And so anyway, I can come back here. And it's like, alright, so this party is not happening, and there's all these like backpackers and other kind of random, like, you know, people that have travelled for this little event thing. And it's like, okay, let's bring the party back to my place, like we were originally going to do in the first place, and, you know, come down and you can camp at my place, and, you know, for the night, you know, we'll put some fuel in the Jenny and have a little sound system, so like you guys have got somewhere to stay and you're not having to be forced to be camped in the bush illegally. So I gave these people shelter in my home. Probably had, I don't know, 50 people come maybe. Anyway, so they came and we had a little party. There's pictures of it up on the internet and you can check it out. And then they all went. Then the next day, the police rolled up at my house. Started harassing one of the people that was parked in my driveway out the front. Young, I think they were a Swedish couple, a bloke and a girl. There's photos of them up on the internet as well. Basically hassling them out and trying to be dicks of themselves, these coppers. Now, since then, I've had false charges brought against me involving my own mother, who I've since found out was press ganged into providing painkillers. I saw this bag was probably about 1/4 cubic metre worth of painkillers that she was getting from the shops or the chemist in Lismore, thanks to this car accident that she had. And it's very unlike her. She used to be quite a good driver. I believe that she was intimidated into having a car accident for the purposes of supplying precursors to these police and other persons as part of their pseudo manufacturing operations. So anyway, my mother then apparently has since become Kyogo's Australian of the Year somehow. Did exactly what she did to my father 20 years ago. And even though it's my place, you know, she came here originally seeking shelter from a supposed domestic violence situation in Hillsville with her business partner, whose business she destroyed. Roy Bennett is his name, from Hillsville. Anyway, she rocked up here seeking shelter, so I gave her shelter, and she proceeded to make a complete pain in the arse of herself. And so, having scared away my basically my volunteer workers that were coming here and helping us do the woofing, having scared away my partners, having scared away my girlfriend, Heather, who, despite having cracked ribs at the time from the car accident that my mother, I believe, intentionally had, and so that she could get these painkillers from the Lismore chemist for these coppers. Basically, she destroyed my whole business and then was claiming compo from Centrelink, this Australian of the Year. Now, she moved in and she bought, she basically bought herself a few boxes of knickknacks, which I later found out as she was loading out, as I kicked her out of the property after finding out that she was actually faking being disabled and making me wait on her hand and foot, making a complete asshole of herself. And you can talk to the guys at Graham's Concrete in town there. They witnessed her, supposedly disabled lady claiming disability pension from Centrelink, screeing an entire concrete slab by herself, one that she demanded for this water tank that she wanted for this garden that she wanted in the wrong place. Anyway, so there's proof there from the guys at Graham's Concrete in Kyogo about her faking her disability. She had me fooled. She's a pretty good actor. She was involved in the Toast Mistress Society back in the day, debating and theatrics and whatnot. Anyway, so whether or not she was under duress by these coppers, which I'm pretty sure she was, it's a pretty fucked up thing to fucking do to your son, I think. So yeah, the woman is dead to me. And anyway, I kicked her out, and then because that interfered with the police pseudo operation, basically with her help, she claimed domestic violence AVO orders against me, and they ignored conflicting evidence, that basically stitched me up in court. It denied me the ability to submit my own evidence, and disqualified my licence for a year. Now I took that and I appealed that. It cost me $125. Oh, with that too, if I hadn't have appealed it, and there's evidence on the YouTube, you can check it out. So when the corrupt magistrate Halpern from the Kyogle court, who in collusion with the police prosecuted and incriminated me on false charges, including this AVO from my poor mother, who basically said that I threatened to kill her. Basically, it was a retaliation for me kicking her off my land when she owed me a shitload of money. I was paying for her phone. I was paying for. She was supposed to pay for this slab that she wanted. She, basically reneged on that, which caused me massive debt. And during this whole process, the cops have actually threatened me and threatened my dog, trespassed illegally in my lands a couple of times. Now, the other matters relating to the first matter in the Kyogle court included failure to stop for police, resisting arrest, apparently, and what was the other one? I forget. It's on there anyway. But basically, these cops, they after I'd kicked my mother out and successfully got her out of the property, in addition to laying false charges with no evidence whatsoever, and conflicting statements from witnesses, and conflicting statements and irrelevant statements from police officers who weren't even involved in the matter. They also tried to stitch me up for these resist arrest charges. So anyway, getting back to that, they tried to pull me over, knowing full well who I was, and full well what my vehicle looks like, despite them testifying otherwise in court during the first matter. And I can prove that they actually lied in court, because my most recent court, which I'll get to in a second, appearance in Kyogle, the officer Tony Fahe admitted, despite having no interactions with me or my vehicle for any other matters, knew exactly what my vehicle looked like and who I was, from the time that him and his mates came to my property, illegally trespassed on a number of occasions, and basically stitched me up for the first set of matters. So in the subsequent matter, which I'll get to in a second, in court, on the stand, he's actually admitted that he knew exactly what my vehicle looked like and who I was, and targeted me for this stitch up on driving without a license, or driving with a suspended license. As I said, I'll get to that in a second. So anyway, they've targeted me. They've previously threatened me, and they've tried to pull me up in the middle of nowhere. And I had my dog and a backpacker from out of town coming to visit to do some woofing on the property. So I wasn't going to stop in the middle of nowhere and have these guys who have previously threatened me, these uniformed New South Wales police officers, Michael McCormick and Tony Smith, who I saw in the car as they drove past me, then did a U-turn, and then started to, chase me. I assumed at the time that it couldn't possibly be them, because this is before I worked out everything. But I assumed that it couldn't possibly be me, because I'd been doing nothing wrong. I wasn't speeding, so I gave them the opportunity to pass until they started acting dangerously and basically threw them, almost caused an accident on the sharp bend on the road out to my place. And in which case it was very clear that they were aggressive and dangerous and intended to cause me harm. So there was no reason at all that I should comply with an unlawful order from unlawful police officers that have previously threatened my life and the life of my dog. So anyway, they've pulled up to the driveway. They've I've driven quite slowly. I've attempted to get out of the vehicle like they asked me to. They stood in the doorway and blocked me from getting out of the vehicle. And then one of them's walked back to his car, come up and pepper sprayed all of us. Fucking idiot, knuckle dragging sloth called Michael McCormick. Walks around with his mouth open catching flies half the time. Anyway, he managed to pepper spray all of us, so I thought that was quite amusing. And then I've gotten out of the car. Anyway, this is all covered in other videos. So anyway, these guys have stitched me up on a number of charges, falsified it, and there is evidence on the police car in-car footage that will exonerate me from all of that. And I've also got witness statements which were disallowed and other things. So anyway, that was all denied by the corrupt magistrate Halpern, who is involved with these matters, and I can prove that too. So anyway, if I hadn't have appealed on these matters, I would have automatically defaulted on the fines because of a failure of due process by the New South Wales justice people who work simultaneously both for the local court in Kyogle and the district court in Lismore. Conflict of interest. And separation of powers, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, there's a failure of due process, and I have a postmarked letter delivered after the date of the default of the initial notices, which would have seen me as part of the conditions that Halpern put on the bond for the false charges of resisting arrest and failure to give way to a vehicle, because I did actually give way. I indicated a number of times, and after realising that they were being quite aggressive and dangerous, I thought the best thing to do was to allow them to pass, so I tried to. They didn't, blah, 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 and we'll go into that later. So false charges of resisting arrest, etc., etc. They delivered these payment notices late, after the default date on the fines, which by the conditions of the bond order, if I hadn't have appealed, despite the court date, the local court only being open one day a week and me having to walk 16 k's into town to do that, because of the disqualification of my licence. One of the conditions was that if I defaulted on any of the orders, including the fines, is that I would go to jail immediately. So why, through a failure of due process, were these notices and these instructions on how to pay my fines delivered after the default date, which, if I hadn't have appealed, would have made me, instantly go to jail? First, failure of due process. Right, so moving on from there, I did actually appeal, and I appealed, and I went to the district court in Lismore. Now, I have mentioned on several occasions that the corruption goes right up to Lismore area command level. Now, whilst I was waiting for the appeal, there was a stay on the orders for the both the disqualification, the licence, and the fines. Now, I've got recorded, and it's on YouTube, you can listen to the conversation. I've got recorded confirmation that that is in fact the case, that the orders were stayed. Now, second failure of due process. The stay on the orders was not processed. It was not processed to the relevant authorities. So quite conveniently, the Tony Fahey was able to, despite having a stay on the orders and being told in no uncertain terms that I do actually have my licence until such time as the appeal is made. And I must add this, that the appeal was successful. I had the license suspension annulled. I had the fines annulled in the appeal. And I've got that on paper, in writing too. Despite this, they decided to falsify documents stating that my licence was suspended. And I've actually got proof from Western Australia that I did actually have my licence at the time. It wasn't suspended. So they've actually falsified documents that they've issued to the court, which I don't actually have copies of these falsified documents, mind you. They said I didn't need copies of them, which is interesting. So yes, I know I'm waffling and I'm losing a few of you, but bear with me. So despite having the fines annulled and being overturned, I was still given a criminal record. And I wasn't allowed, for some reason the process stopped, and I was prevented appealing to the state court. I don't know how the fuck it happened. I tried every which fucking way to try and appeal the decision, because yes, I had the orders removed for the fines and the license suspension, but I was still found guilty and given criminal record. But I wasn't able to appeal it for some fucking reason to the state level. I have no idea why that is. Basically, all of the avenues electronically for filing the documents and whatnot were closed, and the registrars at Kyogle and Lismore basically wouldn't accept my attempts to appeal. So anyway, I have evidence of the successful quashing of the fines and the licence suspension from the orders given in the Lismore magistrates, Lismore judge in the appeal proceedings. Anyway, I've got them in writing and in digital copies in a number of locations. So that, to prove that I did have those penalties removed, I got a notice the other day in the mail from New South Wales Revenue stating that I still owe money on all the fines that were issued, and also that there's a $150 additional notice. This is despite me actually sending them through copies of the paperwork showing that the fines were removed, and their reasoning is that they haven't been notified again. Failure due process. What's going on here? You can't turn your phone while recording. There we go. So failure due process. The annulment of the fines hasn't been passed on to New South Wales Revenue, despite my request for it to happen, and despite me providing evidence that the fines no longer exist. New South Wales Revenue is still trying to chase me for $1,000 worth of fines, which don't actually exist. Failure of due process, once again, by New South Wales justice officials who work for both Kyogle and Lismore, and are indeed involved in these matters concerning drug dealing, police and New South Wales justice officials. So, next we have a situation where I'm driving to see my father, who I hadn't seen for almost 30 years, and I am shadowed by 3 police cars who wait until I'm out of town to pull me up on the side of the road, pretty much again in the middle of nowhere, and then tell me that I don't have my licence, despite me having proof with me at the time that I had a stay on the orders for the suspension of my licence. Didn't want to see that, didn't want to fucking hear a bar of it, and falsely prosecuted me for having a driving with a disqualified licence, which actually wasn't the case, and I can prove that. So, the mention for the second lot of matters involving me driving with a disqualified licence, supposedly, the false charges on that, which never should have gone to trial, guess who was presiding in the mention for the false charges of me driving without a licence? Magistrate Hailpern. Who was the magistrate who gave the orders in the first place, which were firstly stayed and then secondly overturned by a more senior judge? So we're having a situation where there's a local magistrate whose orders were overturned previously, ruling on matters relating to his judgment, which was overturned. Conflict of interest. So I then proceeded to go to the court, not worried at all, and basically ready to call out these motherfuckers for their drug dealing bullshit and the falsification of charges, with a full digital drive full of evidence which would exonerate me. So I get into the court for the disqualified while driving licence, which again, the suspension of my licence originally was stayed at the time and then subsequently overturned. I will also say from the first matters, for the reasons why my licence was disqualified at the time, I was found to have fucking no drugs or alcohol in my system by the tests that they gave me at the time, after they pepper sprayed and beat me, not before, after. So they came up to me, they pepper sprayed and beat me in my own fucking driveway after previously having threatened me, after I've witnessed drug dealing by New South Wales police in Queensland. Right? So I blew 0-0 and then somehow still managed to have my licence suspended, which wasn't actually suspended because it was overturned, it was stayed, and then it was overturned in the appeal. So then I went to another trial on false charges where 3 fucking cop cars followed me, pulled me over, and then in the trial, Officer Fahy admitted that the car wasn't flagged. There was nothing on their system to say that, you know, basically my licence was suspended. And he said this in court, under oath on the stand. But he decided to pull me up anyway because he clearly saw who I was and knew my vehicle, which is in complete contradiction to the supposed random breath testing that happened for the first set of matters. Yeah, so again, proof that the police have lied in court, where they swore black and blue that they had no idea about who I was or who my vehicle was, and that they decided to randomly breath test me, which is where the whole thing kind of started. Right, so in court, Tony Fahy is not only like stopped me, you know, on a completely non-random check. He has knowingly, and this is the thing, he's knowingly pulled me over saying that I had unpaid fines and my license was suspended, and this is on the video. So he knew, without checking my license or anything to that effect, he knew in his head that my fines were not paid because the court officials did not send the fine payment details until after the default date, which would have resulted in the disqualification of my license. His stated reason for pulling me over, despite it not being in his computer, was for unpaid fines. Right? That was his stated reason for pulling me over. It was for unpaid fines, which was not the case, and they were stayed, the fines were stayed, and subsequently overturned, despite due process not being followed by the New South Wales justice officials who work for both the local and district courts of Kyogle and Lismore, and also are involved in press ganging people into their narcotics manufacturing and distribution ring. So, we have multiple cases of failure of due process, and we have New South Wales state revenue trying to knowingly extort money out of me when they're in full possession of the information that states that I don't actually owe them any money at all, for the first set of matters. And the second set of matters, I haven't been able to, well, the second set of matters don't count at all because they were actually illegal. Firstly, it should have never gone to trial because Magistrate Halpern cannot legally send a matter to trial that has previously been overruled that he set up in the first place. Secondly, it's on record that the evidence that I had to clear my name was not even looked at. It was just disallowed straight up. Like, no, you cannot present any evidence to exonerate yourself. And that is illegal. So the second set of matters, which I haven't been sent any information from New South Wales Revenue about yet, were actually illegally run by the magistrate in the Kyogle court. So there's been a complete failure of due process on a number of occasions where procedure hasn't been followed in the courts. There's people working for both the local and district courts that have a stake in the matter, and that stake is, well, one, trying to tarnish my name and the evidence that's been given to the federal police regarding serious corruption and drug dealing by Kyogle and Lismore police and justice officials. And the extortion of fines and money, from myself trying to ruin my business, make me bankrupt and unable to undertake my lawful business. Now, if you remember at the start of this broadcast, I mentioned that, in fact, the young kids who came here and propositioned me about using my property for one of these little events, cancelled the event. They then took me to Queensland to hire my shade structures, where I witnessed the involvement of senior New South Wales police officers in a major drug deal. So they come here first and then take me over the border where I witnessed this drug deal. So it all started here. Right? And I know, because I've been told by a couple of these young kids, that either themselves or their brothers or sisters or other family members have been forced into working for these drug dealing cops under threat of themselves or their family being incarcerated, either through breach of bail conditions or through, false charges. So basically the line from the cops is, you work for us, you got to make drugs for us, is what the cops say. Otherwise you go to jail and we'll charge you with, making drugs. So not only are the police making money and the court people making money from false charges and drug-related charges and impoverishing the community through, a business that the cops are running, which impoverishes people through a cycle of, addiction and poverty. This is ICE we're talking about. So the police are involved in manufacturing and distributing ice, which creates poverty and addiction and you know, bad juju in the community. They're making money off that. And then they're also making money off busting people and trying to frame people that speak out. Now it gets worse, because as I mentioned at the start of this, I'm up on top of the mountain saying this, because my carriage service, which is a federal offence, mind you, interference with the carriage service, and I mentioned this before, my carriage service, being the NBN internet, is being tampered with by officers, and it takes some fairly senior authorisations to be able to have access to this technology. I'm being monitored, and I'm having my carriage service, which is the NBN, interfered with to prevent me from being able to. Okay, so they've stopped me from being able to go out and do my external business. So you know, I'm also a web programmer and an engineer and a few other things. Quite a handy dude if you don't fuck with me. Basically, my only other source of income, having had vehicles tampered with, having had all sorts of things tampered with, having had my ability to undertake my lawful business tampered with, was online web programming and engineering businesses. And they keep fucking with that too. Interference with the carriage service. It's quite a serious federal offence. Now, someone really needs to take a state. And what I mean by that is that we need to rowdy up people and say no more. Now, I've mentioned a couple of times that there are channels available for those of you that have been intimidated by these local thugs wearing police uniforms and masquerading as justice officials. There are channels to be able to free yourselves from this enslavement, and that's what it is, unlawful enslavement. And I encourage you to take up arms, be they pen and paper or be they actual arms or legs. There are several locations around the Shire, around the Northern Rivers, that would make excellent locations for an ambush. And I say, it's time to play these fuckers at their own game. They want to intimidate us, they want to harass us, they want to extort money out of us, they want to threaten us, they want to shut down our businesses. No fucking more. No more. It is time to rise up and shut down these drug dealing cops. So when they come for their cut or their bunch of chemicals, you have every right as free citizens to ambush them and to kill them. And yes, you did hear me right. That is what I said. But don't do it in a way that endangers you or your family. It's time to rise up. And it's time to hobble these assholes. It's time to take away their weapons, take away their vehicles, take away their abilities to communicate. Now, if you'd like, quite useful being an engineer. I also know a thing or two about strategy and tactics. I'm at the edge. I've got nothing else I've got nothing to lose basically. Man, look what we've done here. We've planted out, and you can't see it really. 7,000 or 8,000 head of trees in there, regenerating the rainforest, protecting the water catchments. You know, trying to get the land regenerated slightly. That's all I've been about. I've been attacked on multiple fronts by drug-dealing police officers and justice officials from the New South Wales government. Now I'm ready to mount an attack. Anyone that's with me, I'd be only too happy to help you. So have a very lovely day. I'm going to sign off from the top of the mountain now. I've been going on for long enough. It's quite a beautiful day on top of the mountain. Just think about it. I think it's time to castrate some pigs. Let's start with their cars. See ya.